Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Arc Vision podcast. Our guest today is Aaron Nowak. Yes, he is a veteran. He was our fourth episode. And to go back into him, Aaron is someone fascinated with the more esoteric and abstract parts of life. Like the greats before him, such as Carl Jung, Rudolf Steiner, and Alan Watts, he has a brilliant ability to articulate and share what he has learned. Education-wise, Aaron attended Mohawk College for Environmental Science. His passion for the harder sciences, such as chemistry, math, and physics, has recently transformed into a curiosity with sacred geometry and astronomy. Taking his comprehensive background and a recent interest in the practice of yoga, Aaron is currently finding a way to create a methodology that incorporates all of these parts of his life in a way that can be practically utilized in people's day-to-day lives. So Aaron, welcome back to Arc Vision. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Anton. It's good to be back.
Fantastic. So the first thing I want to get into is, before we were talking, you actually mentioned, and I didn't even realize this, but it is the summer solstice, correct? It is the summer solstice. Correct. And yes. You, of course, with your sacred geometry and astronomy, you said that you'd like to take this special day and go into this topic. And I know almost nothing about it, even though I'm a certified astrologer. I don't really know too much of the background. So kind of what is so fascinating about it to you?
It's a day that is celebrated by a lot of cultures, ancient cultures, modern cultures, just because of its significance in the growth stages, the cyclical growth stages of the year. There are the four seasons, right? Spring, summer, fall, winter. And when you look at what that means from like a cyclical standpoint, spring is kind of like that. It's that rebirth. Summer is like growth and throughout the summer reaching up to a maturity. And then fall is kind of like the fruits of the harvest, right? And then winter, you go kind of into a little period of like decay and getting ready for, growth again. And so the summer solstice to me just means a very rewarding time of year, because I feel like anything that you have been working towards, at least in my personal life, it always seems to, that's when things really start to fruit. And you really get to just enjoy the work that you've put in over the last few months. And I know you're an astrologer. I'm actually a little surprised that you're not a little bit more like into the solstice. And there's probably a lot that we can discuss about astrology and what it all means. But my sign is a Cancer. And so in addition to it being the solstice, this is the start of Cancer, the Cancer season, right? So I don't know, just like it feels like it's my time, and I always enjoy this time of year. And being the solstice, it's also the longest day of the year. So I mean, the sun started to, I was up probably just before 5 a.m. and the sun was already starting to come up. Like the sky was already starting to change from that deep dark shade of blue into like those light shades. So I got up and I got changed and went for a walk. I walked around the city just 5:15, and I walked till about just after 6 a.m. and then came back here and just started doing my normal morning routine. So I don't know, just like a high energy point of time. That's also why like I was up so early. I just feel like there's so much energy in the world and in the universe. Like I just couldn't even sleep. And like,
really?
Yeah, I'm not mad about it. Sometimes I get a little mad when I get my normal sleep, but I'm not mad about it right now. I know that there's probably a reason that I feel so energized, and just seeing what happens and just rolling with it. It's all good.
So I have two questions. The
Sure.
First one is, I love how you described the different seasons and the solstices, how they're essentially parallels to our lives as well. Like spring is, 0 to, what do you say, like 18? And then summer is like 18 to 40. or something, and then fall would be 40 to 50, like,
oh, you're talking like the stages of like life
of life, because I think of when we're going through school and when we're getting to about 18, we're just learning. We don't know who we are yet, but we're putting in the work and the foundation for who we're going to become, hopefully. If our parents do a good job of raising us, if society does a good job of fostering what we're putting in, hopefully around our early 20s to late 30s, let's say. And then even if you think about like, yeah, because kids, like women, when did they say problems start to arise with birth? 35?
I would probably say it's around then, only because like life kind of moves in 7-year cycles, right?
Yeah, and exactly. Yeah.
And that's why they say like a teenager or like a young adult starts at like 14, 15, because that's when you're going into your third 7-year cycle, right?
Yeah.
And then I personally didn't feel like till I was like an adult until I was 21. And then, and so I would say almost like from like age 0 to 21, that is kind of like spring in life, right? For me, and then like that was when you're like a lot of growth happened, but then the later adult parts of your life, that's when like you mature, right? You mature, and then it's when you get to like I would say your 40s, that's when you start to actually just enjoy the benefits of the hard work you've put in. Again, like the harvest, right? The fruits of the harvest. That's when you're an adult. It's like that's when you should be able to, kick back a little bit and enjoy life a little bit more, because you've put in the work. You've grown, you've matured. Now enjoy the fruits of that. And then, once you get older, I would say past 70. And again, once you hit 70, you've hit 10 cycles of 7 years.
Yeah.
And that's when naturally a body should start to
decay.
Go like a decay. Decay is a pretty harsh word, but it is probably the most correct one.
It should start to let go.
Yeah, let go. And I mean, it's funny because when you see older people, they very much have that mentality of they just kind of let go of things. And that's why like people funny sometimes, because they do what they want. They're letting go of everything that their life has been kind of like not conditioning them, but they just start to really let go and, become free. And it's when you die that you actually attain, like your soul attains true freedom, in that it leaves its body. And again, that's when like a discussion for reincarnation and all that. Some people believe in it, some people don't. But I think it's something that's worth discussing.
Yeah, and I find the interesting thing about, there's a few things. So when you mentioned at 40 years old, you're starting to reap the benefits. And that is really interesting, because if you think about, if you probably polled the average, actually even the world, you'd probably find that most businesses start to take off in their 40s. That's when your kids are probably 5 to 10 years old, sometimes 15. You're starting to reap the benefits of they're going through their next stages. So it is funny that, 40 seems to be this pivotal age. And how many cycles it would be 38?
So 42 would be going into your 7th cycle, because
that would make sense.
Dead in the middle. 35 is like your halfway point between 10 cycles of 7.
Right. So 42, because like that's when I always hear about incredible payoffs in life, around 42, early 40s. And then the funny thing about the letting go that we were talking about of let's say the elderly, at 70, you usually see two things. The first is embittered. You see really grumpy elderly, just pissed off at life. They're very jaded. And it's like those. Pardon me?
Why do you think that is?
So this is why I'm bringing this up, because the other side is some of the happiest people you'll ever meet are people in their 70s. So it's like there's this dichotomy of It's almost in astrology we call it Saturn returns. So you go through Saturn returns at around 28 to 30 years old, and this is where the energy of Saturn is going to challenge you the most. It is going to, usually this is when the biggest hiccup, like talk to your parents. I talked to both of my parents. I've talked to every single close friend I know that has kind of made it past that time. And they always say, oh yeah, 28 to 30, that's when my mom got sued. My dad lost his job. And then another person I know lost his twin brother to cancer. And so it's like these, about 28 to 30, you start to see these like massive tests of the spirit, of the will. And then you get another Saturn returns 28 years later at 56 to 58, I believe. Yeah, 28, 56. Yeah. And then so that's when you're tested again. And it's almost like the way they see, the astrologers see it, is if you don't pass that first Saturn returns, those next 28 years are extremely tough, because you fail. Like, it's not like you failed a test. It's like this thing happens that's going to shake your foundation. And if you've been putting in the work to build up yourself, to build up your being a humble human being, being empathetic, you can survive, not only survive this event, but you can learn from it and prosper and grow and reap the benefits of what you're saying. But if you don't, if you let it embitter you, if you say fuck the world, you just took the only thing that mattered to me, or what the hell's going on, right? Like these are serious things. Then the next 28 years of your life you are in denial, like you are jaded. And then guess what happens if that happens again? You get another Saturn returns at 56. Now imagine if you double down into your jadedness. Then you end up being that 70-year-old, that elderly human being who's just like, screw this, like screw the world. And I apologize for swearing, but it is exactly what you're talking about. And it's that Saturn returns. And I think that's why you get these two kinds of elderly, these people that have let life beat them and have not chosen to grow. And then you have on the other side, people that have grown with life, accepted it on life's terms, and have turned into beautiful human beings.
Yeah, wow. That definitely made a lot of sense for me, and some of the things that I've have gone through in my earlier stages of life. And like I said in the last podcast, I'll be turning 29 actually.
Wow, yeah. So you're like just going through your Saturn returns.
And it's funny because you touched on two principles that I wanted to comment on, and they are similar, but the first one is giving and receiving, right? And if in your first 28 years, you do a lot of giving, you put in the work, I think that's when life will give back, right? It will start to give back in like proportion.
Yeah, balance.
Right, the balance. And the other principle that, it's a little simpler, but I've always believed in is work hard now or work hard later. And that's why, like, I would admonish any kid who is in school to just put in the work. Like, love where you are. Don't look at it as hard, because I remember when I was in school, adults were telling me, like, enjoy it while you have it. Don't school, because like it's actually relatively easy compared to the rest of normal life. And I mean, I listened to them, but I more so myself, I enjoyed school, and that's why I put in the work. But I am so glad I did, because all that hard work paid off. And even in my early years of career, me working hard in college and in my early years at my job, it seems like now it's starting to pay off. And I'm glad that I put in the work then, as opposed to now having to go back and put in the work later. And so for these people who their first 28 years, they just took a lot and they didn't put any weight or hard work into things, their return Now it's when they're having to work, and I would think it would almost feel unnatural, because you feel like your life should be going the other way, and it feels a little unnatural, and that could cause some like negative emotions. But again, it's like, are you going to double down and do even less, or are you now going to finally learn from your lesson and now start to put in work? And I mean, I don't think it's ever too late. Even like same thing with investing, right? I know you're into finances and investing. You know, if people are in their like 40s and they say, oh, you know, I didn't set up any RSPs or any investments, anything, they're like, what good is it going to do now? And it's like, well, maybe you might have to invest more per week or per month than you would have if you started when you're 20 or 18, but there's still a valid reason too. You just have to put more into it now, right? But if you start young, you know, it's that little investment in financial terms, a little investment of money, but then in other ways, it's investment of your time and your energy, where it will pay off later on.
Yeah, especially because one thing that's been occurring to me a lot lately is just this idea of like, this moment is all you have. And you can make all these, because I've made so many excuses for why I should be in a different place, why I can't do something right now. But then I just have to remind myself that this is right now. If I'm having the intuition to do something, I need to do it right now, because this is all I have. If I was really meant to do it 10 years ago, the universe would have nudged me harder and then slammed me with a truck. I've literally talked to people. A close friend of mine, Diane, she was off her path, let's say, and she kept getting these little nudges kind of by the universe, let's say, just these things happening, weird synchronicities. And she just didn't listen. She just kept working for the biggest telecommunications company in the world. She was working for this company. She was high up management. And she's a psychic medium. So she's quite out there. And she was doing this very corporate, I don't know if soulless is the right word, but that's what it felt like.
Not in line with her soul.
Exactly. That's actually a brilliant way of putting it. And what happened was she actually got hit by a car. Hit by a truck, and
Literally.
messed up her back. She was in the hospital. She had to go to physiotherapy, and she wasn't able to go back to work. And they literally couldn't take her back. So in that moment of just pure despair, she was forced to confront her own life and how she'd been, in a sense, running away, because her mother thought that her psychic ability was the devil, because she was born in a very, Christian household, right behind you, the Last Supper. So she thought this was the devil speaking to her. And she said, do not do this. Do not engage with this ability you have. And what happened was she actually lost the ability for many years of her life. It went latent. She couldn't connect to what she calls spirit anymore, the universe. And after this accident is the first time she could in half of her life. And so ever since, she's went on a new journey, and now she's starting up. She's doing seminars now. She's a seminar leader. She has her own YouTube channel. She has clients. She's helped with museums finding lost artifacts, helping museum curators find things that supposedly were never meant to exist. She's actually found like lost, kind of like Indiana Jones kind of stuff. So yeah, to your point, I do think that life, all you have is right now. And if it really was something that you missed, the universe is going to find a way to bring you into alignment anyway. And then if it has to hit you with a truck, it will. And like, what do you think about the idea of the universe always nudging you? Do you think it's always nudging you, or do you think it is not holding your hand in any way? I want your perspective on this.
So one of the things that we kind of touched on in our last discussion was follow your heart. And I mean, like that does, sometimes it sounds a little corny, but it's very true.
Yeah,
right?
Follow your intuition.
Right. And like, that could also be listening to your soul. And if one of the things that I said earlier, like work hard, work now or work later, but you could also apply that to listen now or listen later. It's like either you listen to what your soul is telling you to do, or it's like, to listen later, right? And like later on, you might not love what you're hearing because you'll have all these experiences that you're now going to reflect on and been like, oh man, like I should have done things differently. And sometimes those truths are a little, it's a bitter pill to swallow. So it's better to just, listen as things come up, listen. And that's one of the reasons why meditation is important, right? Like kind of quiet down your mind. And then the things that are really important to you at like a soul level will come up, right? You can quiet out all the mundane things, all the things that really have no real weight or importance to them. Put those out of your mind for a moment and let the important things come up. And then that's where a lot of like clarity comes into your mind, where you realize like what it is you need to do and oftentimes how to do it. And sometimes like that might take a few sessions where you hear what you need to do and how to do it, and you kind of again you shove that off for a little bit, but then every time you kind of go into meditation or you just listen to yourself, it will become more and more apparent, and the message will be just coming in louder and stronger. And it's that's a good time to listen to it, and to if changes in direction are needed, go for it. And I think you'll only be rewarded.
Yeah. I remember when my astrology mentor, Christopher, one thing we were going over is these Saturn returns. And he mentioned to me, he was talking about Saturn returns. And I said, oh, that's fine. I'll be able to see this coming a mile away. Like, I'm smart. I'll be able to like kind of think it through. And I remember what he said. He said, no, like, no matter how strong your intellect is, the universe will find a way to utilize that against you. And he's like, you have to learn how to trust your intuition. And the reason why I bring this up is this was when I was 21. I believe I was 20 or 21. And I was so mental first. I was so, is it left brain? Left brain that's analytical, right?
Right brain.
Right brain. So I think it's left brain.
Left brain.
Yeah.
Right brain,
So I had such a predominance in my left brain that I didn't even know what intuition was. I was so lost from myself. I had no clue. Every single decision I ever had to make took so long because I was always weighing pros and cons and finding validation from others as a way of being my intuition, because I didn't know what to do. And I feel like we're kind of conditioned through life in our society to do that, to go to other people and go to these pros and cons lists as a way of making decisions. But that was, going back to your point about intuition, 2021 was when I first started even knowing what intuition was. And I was, at first, it is like a muscle, because at first I had no idea even how to feel it, how to sense it, what it was. How do I know when I'm presented with two options, which is the right one? Like, what is the sign, as Paulo Coelho said in The Alchemist? What is the sign? How can you decipher it? So for you, I have two questions. The first is, have you been able to establish, because then I can share how I've established what my intuition feels like. But first, have you established what your intuition sounds like, quote unquote? And also, speaking of Saturn returns, as you're turning 29, have you established the theme of this Saturn returns or these challenges at this point in your life?
Okay, so the first question, how does my, you said inner voice?
Yeah, what does that sound like to you? How, to someone like who's listening, who has no idea what the heck we're talking about, what is intuition? How do you describe it to people? What does that process feel like?
Again, it comes to me through meditation, and the more I set time aside for meditation, the more I can kind of become in a state of just like walking meditation, where as I move through my day, I'm kind of always in a degree of meditation. And so I can often listen to my own thoughts come up, or my own thoughts and my own intuitive voice coming up. And the only way I could describe it is that it's a very clear message. And it'll often be what is for your own good, right? And not just for your own good, but for the good of others. In that sometimes the ego will kick in and try and make you act one way, and you'll have that thought come up, like, oh, I should do this, I should say that.
Yeah.
But my intuitive voice kind of shifts me out of that mind state and puts me into another perspective, and it's to the perspective of the other person and of other people, and it'll ask me, like, will that have the best outcome, not just for you, but will that have the best outcome for them? What are your actions trying to accomplish? And the whole idea of cause and effect, right? Every action we take has an effect, not just on our own life, but on the lives of others. And
butterfly effect.
The butterfly effect, yeah. And I think that's where we can also recognize our own power, in that every good thing that we do has the potential power to influence good in the world, in other people. And that's where you get like the domino effect, where if you keep on, planting good seeds and doing good things, karma, right? Like, good things will come out of it. And it might not be always in your life that the good fruits will come, but other people's lives will improve too. And it's often been said, that's where, the most happiness comes from. It's not just doing what's best for you, but doing what's best for others. And so going into that's a good way to transition into the second part of your question of the Saturnian return, or Saturn return.
They call it Saturn return, but I like that Saturnian return. Anyway, Saturn return.
So I feel like in my life, I've put in a lot of hard work, and I enjoyed it. Like, I think it's very, even mentally healthy to put in hard work, especially when you see like the fruits of that work, and you start to receive blessings and abundance and all that good stuff. And so I honestly feel like, even though I've put in a lot of work, I've been very blessed. And I think that the next part of my life is, it's what can I do for other people, and how can I kind of share the joy?
Very Tony Robbins of you.
Is that what he does?
Oh yeah, he's always talking about the stages of life. Tony, do you know anything about Tony Robbins?
He's the financial.
Okay, so that is the biggest misconception of Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins has nothing to do with finance. And that's facetious. He has a lot to do with finance. But he's a spiritualist through and through. He's even said in interviews, he's like, the reason I got into finance was not to end in finance, but get people into spirituality. Because in our society, if I say, come to my spirituality seminar, no one's going to come. Maybe I'll get 5 people. If I say, get rich or get out of your debt problems, I can flood this entire place, 15,000 people like that. So he's like, it was, for him, he's a very pragmatic man. He's a pragmatic spiritualist. That's the way I describe him. But really, he says everything you're saying. It's incredible. He's an incredible man because he's learned how to bring spirituality into our modern world, just straight through like an arrow. And he has mentioned that in the first part of your life is about learning, so mastery. And so there's 2 mountains. The first mountain is mastery. It's about learning what you're here to do, master what you're here to do. And then as you get to the top of that summit that so many people are wanting to get to, people just want to be the master at whatever they're at. When you get to the summit of that mountain, when you get to the peak of that mountain, you look up and you realize there's another mountain right behind it. And he says that's the mountain of service. That's the rest of your life. Because now the whole reason the universe made you so interested in mastery is so that you can be a teacher. You can be a serviceman in whatever way that is. So the rest of your life is just about service, which is exactly what you're saying. And it's great that you've come to that intuitively, not reading a whole bunch of books about it, because again, that means that you're following your own intuition.
Yeah, they call, I would say what they call the first summit is the false summit. I've heard that in mountain climbing, where you feel like you've reached the top just to realize you're not at the top. It's a false summit.
Yeah, right? There's a whole other game being played.
Yeah, a life in service only to yourself is, I would say, a false life, right? Like you need to see what else you can do to be in service to others. And
it's hollow.
Hollow, and it just doesn't have the same level of satisfaction that it would, right? I'm not sure. I had another thought. Anyway, is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, there is.
So you said something in your last interview, right?
Yeah.
In our last discussion, where you said that you always wanted to be a professor, and then you realized that you no longer want to be a professor. You want to start a YouTube channel.
So that was kind of what I was about to bring up in another way. But I've had a lot of amazing mentors these last 3 years. Incredible mentors. I've had astrology mentors, 2 astrology mentors. I've had financial mentors. I've had cryptocurrency mentors. I've had, investing stock market mentors. And there got to a point where I actually became like anxious, like ridden with anxiety, where I had this like feeling in my chest, like I need to give back, like I'm taking way too much. And it was actually kind of driving me a bit crazy. I actually kind of like broke down to my mom, and I was just like, I'm getting all this amazing stuff and I don't know why. Like why me? And
what do I do with it?
What do I do with it? I can't do anything with it. Like I don't have anything to give people. Like I just felt like worthless in this weird way. I was getting all this worth being given to me, but I felt worthless. I'm like, what can I do to help my friend Aaron? What can I do to help my friend Gabe? Like all these people are able to give me all these amazing things, and I feel like I'm just taking. And it got to the point where with this YouTube and with this investing life, like it just feels like I've narrowed in, like, and it just occurred to me, boom, when I got into crypto, that's when I had the biggest epiphany. I was like, oh my God. And then immediately after, I just started reaching out to all my friends right before that big market crash. And I said, guys, like if you're in the stock market, get out now, get into gold, silver, crypto. And I had a lot of people who were like, oh, like, please tell me more. And that was when I was like, whoa, this is why I was given all this stuff. Like for this moment, for this time. And that's when I started looking at my life and other people's lives as like, we're just conduits of the universe. We're just the messengers of the universe, because the universe can't just go down, grab you, pick you up, bring you to Argentina where you're supposed to be. It does it through synchronicities. And that's for me when I realized that my YouTube career and doing this podcast, this is what I'll be able to help teach people. This is the thing that I'll be able to master that I can give back to people, because I've never felt like I had anything else to give back. Nothing. I've been good at things before, but it never felt right. I was like, I don't feel like I'm the right person to do this, to help people in this way. But now I finally found it. And it's an amazing feeling, kind of realizing there is that second summit and feeling empowered and fulfilled to take that trek. Right?
Yeah. And all the things you've learned now with discussions you're having with people and the discussions you're having on your podcast, there's a transfer of knowledge, and you're able to have conversations about things that are productive, constructive, as opposed to just like mundane conversation. Like I can't stand
me too, man.
right? Like I'd rather just, go about my day in silence than
Yeah,
just
100%.
that have real value to them. But now, like, this is probably stimulating you more to be also reaching out to people that have something interesting to say.
Absolutely.
And maybe they don't have a platform to talk about, the things that are on their mind or the things that they're learning, and you're giving them the platform as well as yourself. And it's funny when I think about my teachers in school. Like I have a few teachers that they were great teachers, but I don't remember exactly everything like specifically they taught me, but it was the way they taught me how to think. They taught me how to use logic and reason and problem solving, and to just kind of like figure things out. It's the whole idea of like teach a man to fish, or give a man a fish, or teach a man to fish, right? And that's where some of the greatest teachers in school came from, and even like in life, you see how other people think, and you just want to emulate their thinking process, right? So that you can come to conclusions that feel like they're more in line with you. And I heard someone say the other day, actually one of my other favorite YouTube channels, Valuetainment, Patrick.
Oh, I love him. Yeah.
Amazing YouTube channel. And one of the things he said, I have an open mind, but I'm not easily persuaded, because he's already given a lot of thought to things that he finds of value. And he's put in the mental work to really try and understand how he feels about it.
I love that. Yeah.
He has an open mind, and he is willing to discuss. And I think that is one of the most important qualities anybody can have, is to just have an open mind, because we're not all going to think the same, right? We're not all going to think the same. We're not all the same. We're all individuals, but have an open mind, be willing to discuss things. And then at least you have like a educated and well thought out opinion or conclusion on things.
Yeah, I love Patrick Bet-Dave. And one thing that, because my mom loves him too, and especially during this COVID thing, like my mom's a huge fan of Dr. Judy Mikovits, and she's been all over Valuetainment and London Real and everything. And she's just like, I love Patrick. He's having all this amazing people on. And one thing that I value about Patrick is that literally what you just said, he's very open-minded. If you actually, like, some people might be like, oh, he's so argumentative, he's not open-minded. It's like, well, look at the guests he's having on. Like, talk about open-mindedness. Not everyone was going to have Judy on, because she had her, I think her medical license almost removed when she went against Fauci. So already, like, and what I wanted to mention is Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message, based on what you just said, that it's not about what you were taught, it's how you were taught. I love that same line of, give a man a fish and he's poor for the rest of his life, but teach a man to fish and he's rich. And I just love that, because that's cash flow. That's cash flow versus capital gains in a way. And yeah, one thing I do love about Patrick is that I was talking about this with my guest, Michael Santinato, and we were talking about too much open-mindedness. Like, what is the line between where you're so open-minded that you're just a feather in the wind and you're not grounded, you can't ever speak, because to speak you have to know what you're going to say, you have to formulate an opinion, unless you're going to just ask questions all the time.
Well, it needs to be educated. Like, you need to whenever you are taking part in a discussion, if it's not coming from an educated place, it's better to just listen, right? Listen to the person who's educated, and just try and absorb as much knowledge as you can from them. And if it's something that is of interest to you, then go after and do some research and try and formulate your own solid foundation on what you believe on that subject. And when we talk about like the line between open-mindedness, like, I don't know if there is a true line to be too open-minded, as long as you, again, have like integrity to your beliefs, right? And I think like integrity is very important especially if it comes from a good place. And that's why, like Patrick Bet-David says, like, I'm not easily persuaded, because he has a solid foundation of where it's coming from, but he's willing to discuss. And if you can show him a line of reasoning that can maybe not totally change his mind, but that can shift his perspective a little bit, then that is a constructive thing. And one of the things that I try to do, this might be something that you appreciate because you're familiar with astrology, is just because I'm a Cancer doesn't mean all I look at is who a Cancer is and the way we are. I like to learn actually more about the other zodiac signs. And if I'm ever having a discussion with somebody or an interaction with somebody, and things aren't like vibing entirely, or like things aren't like lining up entirely, I'm actually curious what their zodiac sign is. Because if I can find out what their zodiac sign is, I can understand them. And even when somebody's done something in like personal life where it just kind of like rubs me the wrong way, and then it's like, oh, but they're a Libra or a Gemini or something, it's like, okay, like I get it now, right? Like, don't take offense to it. It's nothing personal, right? That's just who they are. That is their constitution, right? And like, I'm not going to change their mind or try and change the way they act. That's who they are, right?
Yeah, there was when I think of astrology, I've went through so many different like metamorphoses of how I understand things. Like there was a part where when I first got into astrology, I was so militant. I was like, okay, like I'm a Libra, you're a Cancer, like we can't get along. And I remember like looking up like potential, like, you know, if I met a girl or something, like, you know, figure out her chart and everything. And then what happened is over the years I've kind of like realized that I don't find astrology to be as accurate as people think. And that's not to say accurate is not the right word, but like I don't like it when people get so caught up on star signs. I think that's ridiculous. Like when people say, oh, I'm a Cancer, like you, or I'm a Libra, me. It's like, that's 1 out of 11 signs. That's 1 out of 11 planets. And it's not even the most important planet. I would argue moon sign and rising are more important than your sun. So right there, it's like, and if you have, to people that don't know what we're talking about, it's like you can have your sun in Cancer and you can have your Mercury in Gemini or what's the one beside it, Leo, right? So right there, like you could be a Cancer, you could have your Mercury in Leo, and I could be a Libra and have my Mercury in Libra, and those energies would be in a sextile. They'd be harmonious. So already, first of all, there's 11 planets. So the moment you say like, oh, we're not going to get along because of these two things, it's like, that's preposterous. Like, first of all, I have a lot of
11
Libra.
signs or 11 planets?
11 planets. 11 planets. 12 signs.
Okay. What are the planets?
So
I know but what are the other?
Yeah. So it's actually not 11 planets because rising is part of that. But essentially you have your rising sign, which a lot of people count as like a planet. That is your social facade. That is how you view the world. So a lot of people say your ascendant is your mask, your social mask, your facade. A lot of the time your rising is given a very bad name because they're like, oh, you're your sun. Your rising is how you appear to people, meaning it's more fake than who you are. It's like, not exactly. So where the rising is really important is I don't see my rising as how I'm pressured to be in public. It's that my rising sign is how my baseline for how I view reality. So for example, my rising is Aquarius. So I see the world through a lens of revolution, paradigm shifts, groups. A big part of it is just revolution, being different, uniqueness. That's incredibly important to me. I feel like everyone should be who they are. And because I have that view, how do I act in public in accordance to all the things I think reality is. So then people are like, oh, he comes across like such an Aquarius, but when you really get to know him, he's a lot more seeking harmony as a Libra. I care more about what people think, not in a vain way, but just like I value conversation. I value two things becoming one, creating something unique and new. So that's a bit about rising. Your star sign, your sun, is almost like your unconscious personality. Your rising is like your conscious personality. It's how you actively see things and how you choose to behave. Your sun is a bit more unconscious. It's more like your destiny in some ways, like your unconscious destiny, energetically, how you're being kind of subconsciously pulled through life. Your moon sign is extremely important. I'd say it's like your second most important sign. That is how you feel safe. It's actually owned by Cancer. It is ruled by Cancer. And if you're in any close relationship, intimate, close friendship, you're going to pick up on these people's moon signs, because when they get moody, when your friends or your lovers get moody, when they start to say, I can't do this anymore, that's their moon sign. They're emotionally in upheaval because there's an inconsistency with what you two need to feel safe, secure, heard. A big part of when people say, I don't feel heard by you, a lot of that is coming from that moon energy, because being heard is one of our most important traits as human beings. We're a social species. We need to feel heard. Then the other one, if you want me to continue to go into do you want me to go into the other 10?
I mean, I'm finding this super interesting.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if it's something you had planned for our discussion today, but I find it interesting.
Okay, so the next one is Mercury. So Mercury can be the same as your star sign or one to each side, which is why I mentioned you being Cancer. You could have your Mercury in Gemini. If I didn't know you, I would think your Mercury was in Gemini, because you have the Gemini energy is endlessly curious about everything. It's energy in general. It's always asking questions, almost like an ADHD. Like if I was to give a personality disorder to all of the signs, ADHD would be Gemini, hands down. Obsessive compulsive would be Virgo. Someone who has Leo, I guess those are the usual ones. When you think of like autism or Asperger's, I don't know. I'd have to think about this more.
It's funny. Like those like when people say ADHD, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think I think you're blessed. Like
I have ADHD.
You are probably going to be a very interesting person.
Creative.
You're always getting into something, and you're just a very interesting person. And when you said like a Virgo being obsessive compulsive, I would replace that word with particular.
I have a Virgo moon.
Yeah.
Like that's why, dude.
You know what you want and what you need, and that's it.
Yeah.
You're particular about that.
I'm so routine driven. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like even more. Do you have any Virgo in your chart? Because I feel like you being so routine driven, either 6th house or Virgo or Mercury. Do you know if you have any of that?
Mercury sounds familiar. I've taken a look at mine, but it's not something, because I didn't understand exactly what I was looking at. I don't remember it all that much.
Yeah,
and
because
I wasn't sure. I was like, does that mean like, as interested as I am in all this stuff, the fact that I'm not feeling called to look into it, it's like maybe that's not information I need to know. Like maybe that's my intuition saying like, don't look at the map too much. Like,
yeah.
And just kind of go with the flow with things a bit more. You'll like that information you'll feel that information to be important if you ever need it.
Exactly. And the thing with intuition is I find the language of intuition's curiosity. I find if you want to know what intuition is, what are you thinking right now? If you're in a good mood, what are you curious about? That's your intuition. Like, I love what you said about meditation. You get most of your intuitions through meditation. Same here. If I ever have a problem, I meditate, and then halfway through my meditation, an idea will pop in my head. And since I know I've been deep breathing, since I know my cortisol levels are down, since I know my biochemically I'm calm, I'm like, this is not a thought coming from fear. It's coming from a calm mind, and the intuition comes through a calm mind, through curiosity and through ideas. So many of the ideas I've had for this podcast have come from meditation sessions. Yeah. I'll just have a download. I call them downloads. I just, like, an idea will pop in my head, and I'll be like, and there'll be a feeling to it. It'll be tinged a bit with this feeling of, that feels right, and boom, that's it. I'm like, oh, that's my intuition. Download.
Yeah, I find meditation too, like, it really helps you simplify things. And I would say the opposite of somebody who's like meditative and who is in tune with their intuition is somebody who is overcomplicating their life. And when somebody's overcomplicating their life, either with situations or with things, maybe that's their way of trying to block out that intuition, right? Because they're constantly chasing something to try and fill this hole or this gap.
Yeah.
And trying to bury things a little bit, right? And I noticed even for myself, like, there was like a period for like a year, maybe a little less, where all I wanted to do was like shop. I wasn't buying
really?
stuff. Really? I wasn't buying
I can't
stuff.
see that with you. That's so funny.
I was, like, curious in things, right? And I was always looking at stuff. And when I meditated, I realized, like, what are you trying to bury, right? Like, why are you trying to overcomplicate your life with things you don't need? And so that's when I recognized that, and I started to stop looking at flyers and looking at things online. I'll browse on Amazon, really dial back on like my purchasing. And that's when I noticed that intuition started to really come through strongly again, was because I wasn't burying things. If anything, I started selling a lot of stuff on like, and just giving stuff away. And then the more I kind of simplified my life, that's when intuition really started to come through stronger. And even like days where I feel like there's a lot of just commotion going on in my head, I'll make sure I don't make plans, or if I have plans, I'll try and reschedule them. Okay, I need to just simplify that day. And like even yesterday, I just I stopped watching. I was watching a movie. I finished watching it, and then like I didn't know what to do, so I went for another walk. I went for a walk last night too, and then when I came on, it was on my way home where I just got this like intuitive message to draw. And one of the things I do is I draw and I do geometry. And like so much came in with that. And like, again, you could call it a download, but so much information and wisdom and everything just came through just from going for a simple walk, you know, just leaving where I am and just going for a walk.
What did you draw when you came back?
It was like of geometric background. And that's what that's usually what I do. And I find that when you draw geometry, a combination of squares and circles, I would say a combination of straight and curved lines. And
interesting.
When we're talking about balancing, curved lines are female, straight lines and angles are male.
That makes sense. Chaos and order.
Yeah, when I do geometry and I bring the two together, curved lines and straight lines, it does something with my brain where I'm able to balance my brain. And again, when I talked about seeing things from other perspectives, it allows me to see things from both a female and male perspective.
What other, because that's fascinating to me, because people always say the mind and the body are connected. If you're like depressed, move your body. If you have trapped energy, move your body. Like, because we have this society where if you have a mental problem, you get a mental fix from a psychologist. If you have a physical problem, you get a physical fix. But so much of the time, it's an inverse relationship. So my question to you, is it's so interesting that you're saying that drawing different lines will reprogram your brain, which makes perfect sense. But what other techniques do you have for kind of reaching equilibrium other than drawing and meditation?
So if you're listening to your intuition, this was actually something that came to mind earlier on in our discussion. If you're feeling a little out of balance, do what you want to do almost least. And usually what I mean by that is if I'm kind of like in a funk, the last thing I feel like doing is generally exercising.
Yeah.
If I'm maybe the last thing I feel like doing is socializing. I maybe just kind of retreat into myself and like intuitively listen, like, is this something I need or would I benefit from it? Am I just resisting it? And so again, like if you feel like, if you know deep down you would benefit from it, but you really don't feel like doing it, just do it. Just go and do it. That will shift the energetic balance in your life from mental to physical or from physical to mental, whatever way it is. It'll just bring balance back to yourself. And the other thing too is that in line with exercising, because I live in an apartment, I mean, I could do yoga and stretching and all that here. But when I get outside and I get fresh air, but more specifically, I'm able to like touch actual ground.
Yeah,
that's
yourself
important too, because like if there's even in an electrical sense, you have a balance between positive and negative, right? Electrons and protons. And so if you have maybe like a bit of an imbalance in you, if you get outside and you're able to like touch ground, even take off your shoes, take off your socks, walk around, ground some of that energy. And when you ground some energy, you'll also pull some energy back up.
Yeah, I do that a lot. I used to do that more. I actually stopped doing that. I need to get back into it. But I was, waking up in the morning, getting sunlight, 15 minutes of sunlight to start my circadian rhythm, drinking green tea in the morning, cold shower helps ground you as well, the cold water. And then, being barefoot and doing yoga is incredible. Just stretching in the sunlight while barefoot, like an animal. But one thing I also wanted to bring back just a second is you made an interesting point that when you're in a funk, do not do the thing you feel like doing. And it's really interesting because there is this spiritual teacher that I follow, and what she says is all thoughts are downloads. You actually don't create any thoughts. They're all downloads. And what chooses the thoughts is your emotional state. Meaning, if you're in a funk, all your downloads are chaotic and negative. If you're in a good mood, all your downloads are positive, right? So literally, by definition, when you're in a funk, you should not listen to your thoughts because they're literally coming from like a different part of the universe, let's say. And then, like you said, work out, reach out to someone, help someone. That is so important. If you feel bad about yourself, help someone. And then that will, like, every time I do that, immediately reaches that equilibrium point. And then you'll start to get positive momentum, and then good thoughts will start coming that are intuitions about what to do next. And you just keep climbing that ladder in a way.
Yeah. And like when we were talking before about listening to your intuition, I think that there are two different types of thoughts. You have like your higher thoughts and your lower thoughts.
Yeah.
And your mind is tricky because your mind is very good at justifying things.
Incredible.
And at persuading you sometimes to do things that maybe your soul is telling you something different. Your intuition is telling you something different. And so that's where you have to learn to distinguish between the two. And the more you listen to your intuition, the more you'll be able to distinguish between like your mind's justifying thoughts, which may not actually be overly helpful for you, but then listen to like your higher thoughts or your soul, your intuition coming through. And if you really listen to it, it'll say like, no, do this. Like, that's what you need, right? This is the medicine that you need. Go do that. Yeah, because thoughts can come from two places.
Because I kind of agree with that. It's funny. I've never had what you just said though. I've never had a negative thought and then had like kind of a like an intuitive thought at the same moment. What I've had is that like almost intuition is the feeling associated with the download. So when I'm meditating and I have like, I'm in a good mood, my cortisol is low, and I get a thought, like the download and the intuition are two different things in a way. I'll get the download, but then the download will be tinged with like a feeling of just peace of mind, a feeling of excitement, but like not like an anxious excitement, but like a peaceful excitement, like just this like driven, like an arrow. It's like, this is it. Just, this is it. And then when I'm not in a good mood and I have these downloads, there's a feeling of like sickness to it. There's a feeling of like, I don't think I should do this, but my mind is like, oh yeah, like justifying it and everything. So I find, to me, I don't know, maybe it's different with you, but I find the intuition is the like this feeling I get, and the downloads are something separate. What do you think about that?
So I would say intuition starts as a feeling, and when people first start to really listen to their intuition, it starts as a feeling, but it also kind of sounds like a very quiet voice. But the more you start to listen and tune in, the more that voice becomes louder, and you will know when the feeling and the message are the same, because you will hear it as much as you will feel it. And sometimes words literally pop into my head, like sentences, and my conscious mind will actually ask, like, where did that come from?
Yeah,
it's the strangest thing, but it usually means something. Yep. And so and that's where, like, the more you listen to it, the more you actually start to realize, like, I should listen to that more. And again, like, it has not turned out poorly for me yet when I've listened to that voice. Usually I feel a lot better. And again, like a lot of times it's just something simple. Go for a walk, go sit on a bench, I like astronomy, go look at the stars.
Yeah.
And when I do the simple things like that, that's when oftentimes I'm able to correct myself, correct my course, correct my thinking, and really just find balance again. And it's interesting when you do yoga, there are a series of poses which I would classify as balance poses. And when you go into like a yoga class or a yoga practice, if you have a lot of commotion going on in your head and your head is totally out of balance, you will notice when you go to try and practice that pose, because you will be falling over.
Really?
Yeah, you'll be trying to stand on one foot, you'll be tipping over constantly. And the only thing you can do to improve that balance is to focus on your breath and quiet your mind. And then your balance will start to actually correct itself. And then you'll have other classes where you come in where you may not consciously know that you're balanced, but when you go into the balance pose, you are not swaying 1 inch either way. You are perfectly dead center. And I actually like to close my eyes when I go into balance poses. If I feel like coming into that class, I feel real balance. As soon as I go into that balance pose, I'll close my eyes. And that's when it becomes significantly harder. But the more you actually just quiet down your mind and work on just finding that kind of center line, your balance improves dramatically once again. It's like you've just jumped that next level in balance. And yeah, there's something like terrific when you practice physically balancing your body. There's a terrific benefit to balancing your mind.
Yeah, that is very interesting, because I feel our society, we get mixed up with the symptoms and the causes a lot of the time. So a lot of the time we're thinking, oh, the reason why your balance is off is because, like, let's say you're not breathing, but maybe it's really your head is a mess, and when you start breathing, you're calming your head, and maybe that like we don't know. Like you'd actually have to do an experiment and isolate these two things and figure out which one is actually causing the imbalance. Is it the lack of breath? Is it both, or is it the former?
say you're using your left brain, say you're very dominantly using your left brain, what does that activate more? It activates your right body. And if you are trying to go into a balanced pose and your right body is overly activated and your left side isn't, you're going to notice that when you try and balance in a pose. And so the only thing to do is to start activating your left side more. And when you activate the left side of your body more, it will activate your right side of your brain. And then is your body balanced, but now your brain is starting to balance. You're sending the electrical signals to not just your body, but it's also coming back through your central nervous system and into your brain. And that's why like the mind affects the body and the body affects the mind. They are not separate.
Yeah, everything is connected, and that's a great point to finish up on. We're gonna go with the last few questions, the quick ones that we got last time. So the first one, but before we do that, is there any last summation of ideas you want to speak about? What we were just talking about?
Not without getting into another big discussion. So maybe I'll do that for another day.
Yeah. So I'll ask you this. What is your intention for the next 5 years? Because I know when we were talking, you just started up your YouTube channel again. So for the next 5 years, practically, what are your intentions?
So the last time I was asked this question, I believe my answer was remaining or becoming more creative.
Yeah.
And that's still, I would say that to a large extent, that is still my answer.
Is there anything practical though? Like, is there anything with YouTube or with business or anything?
I would say just being like, I'm always a naturally creative person, but just being more like actively doing something with that creativity. And I guess that is like, I don't know, that's hard to say because I guess that is the definition of the word creative. Yeah, it's tough to answer that question without just repeating myself too much.
Yeah, exactly. And I forget the second one I asked you. Did I ask you if you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your 20-year-old self? What would it be?
You did ask me that.
Literally, I'm like, okay, yeah, no, it's coming back. Okay, yeah. What would shock most people to learn about you? What is the most controversial opinion you have?
Controversial opinion?
Yeah, what's the most controversial opinion you have?
I like to look at moments in history and characters in history, and I like to just try and look at it from a different light. Because it's like hindsight's 2020, and we might be able to say like that was a dark time in human history, but maybe at the time that was something that felt necessary to the people of that time, and maybe that was something that was required for our evolution. And so yeah, I don't think there's anything that's not worth looking into, even if you don't totally agree with the belief or the actions that were taken. But at least you can understand more about who we are as people and why we are where we are now. And I think just being able to broaden your scope of understanding is a very valuable thing, because it just it just gives you more of an idea of why things are, and it lessens your confusion, I would say, and your hopelessness, right?
Yeah, if you get a bit of a understanding of where we came from and that we've been through these hard times before.
Yeah, and that like things might seem like they're not getting better, but they are slowly, right? And I know like we might want change overnight, but I mean, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But I think like just forward, steady progress, sometimes that's enough to ask for.
Yeah,
even
what is
our own personal life, right? Like I might want things. Sometimes things have literally changed for me overnight, and then sometimes things have taken years, right? Is one preferable to the other? I mean, sometimes we want things now, but sometimes that's not what will give us the most value out of the lesson.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
long-term change.
Yeah, and what's that Orwell quote about history? He who controls the past controls the present, and he who controls the what is that? Controls the present, controls the future. Do you know that quote?
I
It
haven't
was
heard
in
that. I would say
1984.
right. That sounds about right.
I heard it the other day, and it was an awesome quote. And it was like, it was a bit jumbled like that. It was jumping back from the present, the past, and the future, but I found it so interesting. But anyway, last one is where can people find you? YouTube channel?
I am on YouTube. I have two channels, one under my personal name, Aaron Nowak, and then the second one under my small business, 1.6 Creative. I do have also two Instagram accounts, one personal and one business. My business Instagram is still kind of a work in progress because it's kind of tough trying to find that balance of like, do I want to post on my business or do I want to post on my personal? So I'm still trying to find that balance. But yeah, Instagram and YouTube. I just put out a new video actually yesterday on my drone flights from this spring. That's actually something that now that the weather's nice, I want to actively do more of. Flying my drones more and just putting together short videos of the nice things that I see. And so I actually have my one drone charging up in the background. I'll be doing some flying today. I flew probably for an hour in total yesterday. I went through 3 batteries.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm doing a lot of drone flight and photography too. But like right now, I just love flying drones. So you'll be seeing lots of that on my YouTube channel.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Aaron. It was a pleasure. And yeah, thank you very much for your time. And to everyone watching and listening, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and I'll see you next time. So I love you guys. Have a great day. Peace.